Alright, so this is going to be a ride along on a typical morning for me to commute to work. So yeah, to the car, different than the gas car, you do have to do something in the morning, and that's unplug, but really with a bit of practice, this goes very quickly. Sorry, it's a bit dark in here. Let's see what's going on. Anyways, there you go, in the car, power button. And just like that, we're ready to roll. So yeah, I'm on my way to work now, and thought I'd just give you a quick overview of what a typical day is like driving an electric car. So I got in the car this morning, and it was nice and warm. I had used my app as I got up and had some breakfast and turned on the preheater. And so I got to the car this morning, and it was a nice toasty 20 degrees in here, and the seat warmer had already been on, and the heated steering wheel had already turned on. And now I'm just cruising through the city streets, nice and quiet, on my way to work. So what I'll do is I'll talk every once in a while in this video, and then I'll be quiet and just kind of do a time-lapse thing and get kind of a perspective of the whole thing, but in a much shorter timeline, so that you're not having to spend the entire hour with me watching it as it goes. So I put up the energy screen to just kind of show, during typical city driving, how much power am I using? Well, I'm accelerating at a decent pace, and I'm only using 20 or 30 kilowatts. So for going around town, the 80 kilowatt motor, which is kind of 110 horsepower, is perfectly adequate, and especially when you combine that power with the amount of torque I have available on hand. When I come up to stop signs, it of course kicks into regen mode even as soon as I take my foot off the gas pedal. Accelerator pedal, go pedal, don't know what to call that thing these days. And I've got plenty of acceleration when I want it. Here I am, use that full 80 kilowatts, I'm up to 50, typical city speed, no problem. So merging and getting a hop on people at lights is not an issue in an electric car, certainly not this electric car. And yeah, so now let's just head through beautiful Nelson, BC. The fall colors are out spectacularly right now, so let's just enjoy those for a little while. I stopped for a minute there and refocused the camera. I thought we should talk about the energy info screen here for a minute. So when it goes below zero into the kind of the green color, that tells me when I'm regenerating. And whenever you start to slow down, it does start to regenerate. What I typically do in the city, I just do whatever I need to do, slow down, speed up, whatever. I do typically try to coast to a stop where I can, just to save energy. But on the highway in particular, it's if you're trying to extend your energy a little further, you want to, when you're slowing down, you want to try and keep it to the zero mark as much as you can. You want to coast to a stop because it's more efficient to let the car coast down in speed than it is to regenerate energy, quickly at the end. and that's because there's inherently losses when you regenerate energy through the electric motor system. The other thing I wanted to point out was the climate control. So the top right here is the climate control, and that will, you know, you see it kicking on and off. I have it set for a fairly comfortable 22.5 in here, 22, and kind of, you know, the second fan setting. That keeps me plenty warm, and often I'll turn it down from that. So when it's +6 outside right now, when in that kind of temperature and having preheated the car, you know, it's going to flip between, you know, 0 and basically 250 watts, kind of on and off. You'll see it kick on for a minute or so, and then boop, it disappears again, or maybe not even a minute. And it depends how fast you're going to, right? If you're going highway speeds, it has to work a little harder to get the energy to work, but it's not that much. Then we've got this other system screen, and that one shows you how much consumption the accessories are using. So, and that's measured in kilowatts as well. So right now I have I've got it on auto lights, but I don't really need the low beams right now. The daytime running lights are just fine. So I'm gonna turn it off, and you're gonna see that the energy drops perceptibly down there, perhaps 100 watts. I don't know exactly, but so the implication there is that, you know, driving with your daytime running lights on versus your low beams gets you, in 1 hour of driving, it would save you 100 watt-hours of energy using your driving light, your daytime running lights versus your low beams, and which is perfectly safe in these types of conditions in daytime driving, obviously. But what does 100 watt-hours get you? Well, my typical efficiency right now is going to be low, because we've just been driving through the city and then I sped up to highway speed. But my typical efficiency, well, here we can show you there. That I've never reset. I shouldn't say never, but I haven't reset it since the first weekend that I owned the car. So 6.6 kilometers per kilowatt hour. So what does 100 watt-hours get you? 100 watt-hours gets you about 660 meters. So that's the difference between running my daytime running lights or my low beams during the day. Obviously at night you don't have a choice, you have to run your low beams. And then what about running your high beams? Well, your high beams, I'll turn my lights back on for a second. I'll just flip my high beams on for a minute here when there's not any traffic. And you see they use about maybe 150 watts. But you don't run with your full headlights all the time. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's inconsequential. I mean, make up 1 kilometer of range, you could slow down by 2 kilometers an hour with the cruise control, and the difference in wind speed at highway speeds, I'm doing 94 right now. Slowing down to 90 would be more than adequate to offset using headlights and whatnot. So I really don't pay attention to this. I don't care whether my headlights are on, my stereo, none of that stuff. It's a waste of time to worry about it. The heat, on the other hand, it does make sense to preheat your car if you need to leave, if range is an issue for you in your commute. If it's not an issue, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a nice convenience to show up your car being warm, and it maybe costs you 5 cents a day to do it. In reality, it's not much different. Preheating the car will use a little more energy than if you just got in the car and drove away and turned on the heater, simply because you're heating the car for longer, right? So you would use more energy to preheat the car initially. But I mean, we're talking on the order of a couple of cents here, and I'm sure most of us waste more than even, you know, a couple of bucks a week on the odd latte or coffee or whatever. I mean, you can preheat your car every day of the week for almost a month for the price of Tim Hortons large coffee, $2. So not worth worrying about. On the other hand, how warm you keep the car when you're driving does make a difference. I use the heated seats and the steering wheel warmer, and I find that that's often enough. And when I do use the heater, I don't have it set to boiling hot. Like, I'm not driving in a t-shirt, you know, wearing a long sleeve shirt and a coat. And I think that's a prudent thing to do anyways when you're driving on the highway in the fall and the winter. I mean, if your car breaks down and you're for some reason stuck in your car, and you can't move, even if you have a jacket in the back of your car, But in terms of heat use, right now you can see it's kind of flipping up to 250 watts and turning back down. So what does that mean in terms of range? It's hard to tell unless I time the entire thing and added up all the times it flips on at 250 watts. I wouldn't really know how much energy it consumes throughout the entire drive. But I have watched it enough over the last year and a half that I have a reasonably good feel for it. So right now, for this entire drive, I would suggest that having preheated, I will only use about 200 watt hours of energy because my drive to work is about an hour, which is kind of convenient when you're trying to calculate these things. A watt, basically, if you run 1.5 kilowatts for an entire hour, you will consume 1.5 kilowatt hours, and that's so one is a measure of power, the kilowatt. The other one is a measure of energy consumption, kilowatt hour. So, and that's what we pay our electrical bill, and we pay it in kilowatt hours. So I will use about 200 watt hours today for my drive, which basically is inconsequential for range. It's around, as I was saying earlier, at 6.6 kilometers per kilowatt hour. I'm giving up maybe a couple kilometers of range at most, and sure enough, there's a little guy, helpful guy up here that will tell me if I turn my climate control off, what will my range end up being. And if I turn it off, you'll see my driving range number here will actually pop up. And then instead it tells me if you want to turn the heat on, or climate control on, you're going to lose a kilometer. And I do that, and it goes down. So that's not too bad. What if I crank it? If I turn it all the way up? Let's do that for a minute. Now I would never drive at 30, because that's just way too hot. But you'll see that the climate control energy use does go up. And in the middle of winter when it's -10, I have seen it as high as 3 kilowatt hours when I've gotten in the car after work and not preheated it. So right off the bat, it will use 3 kilowatts, but only for a few minutes, and then it drops back down and sustains at somewhere between 1 to 1.5 kilowatts, depending on how cold it is in the winter here. And so that does have an effect on my range, obviously. If I use 1 to 1.5 kilowatts for the entire hour, it's perhaps 1.5 kilowatt hours. 1.5 kilowatt hours is about 10 kilometers. So I can, it's getting quite warm in here. Anyways, you see the point. It does obviously use more energy to keep the car warmer. And what you just saw was the car trying to heat up. And it would have only done that for a few minutes at a time. Sorry, I'm too hot. I can't run that anymore. Other screens here that are real handy. Well, it's got the status screen, which I kind of like. It flips. It gives you a flip between your what's going on here, and then if you've got your radio running, it tells you your radio stuff up here.
Radio 1. Here's David Blair now with options.
And the map, I hardly use it because I know where I'm going. So I really don't use the navigation system. I use it occasionally when I've gone to a new town and I'm trying to find where a charger is and I don't know the town that well. But that's about it. So that's pretty much it for functional screens when you're moving. You don't really need that much. There is this driving range screen. It's useless. Ignore it. It assumes that everything's in a straight line from you. Well, obviously it's not, especially in the Commute. There's corners everywhere. So, I know I can't get to some of these farther spots it's showing me on one chart just because the highway goes down and then moves back up. So you can safely ignore that screen. I don't use it. Nearby stations, obviously, anything that's in the navigation system, it'll show you where they are. Update stations, it does have some database it pulls from periodically, but I don't really know how it works, and I don't know which database it's pulling from. I haven't found it very useful here in my part of Canada. However, the car will driving range. You saw there's a whole bunch on the map here. It remembers everywhere I plugged in and shows it as a charging station, even if it's an unofficial, I plugged into a neighbor's wall or something, or I went to a restaurant and they let me plug in. Those all get saved in the nav. They don't get shared to other Nissan Leafs, but they stay in mine. So normally I just use the energy. Actually, I don't even use that anymore. I'm so used to, I know what the car is going to do in different conditions. I don't even bother with that anymore. And the screens in here, I've got my average energy economy to the drive. I've just done a bunch of uphill driving to get to this point where I am. So it's going to start to go down now. Actually, in fact, I think I'll pull back over and get us back a screen that's a little more useful so you can see where I'm going and talk about the driving experience a bit more. Here we go. So we have the camera aimed back at the road, and there's a gap in traffic, so we're going to pull back on, and let's get back up to highway speed as fast as we can. There we are. So the official 0 to 100 time for this car is, I don't know, somewhere in the order of 10 seconds. For me, it's plenty fast enough, especially in the city. It has plenty of get up and go off the line. I never feel like I'm in an underpowered car. It feels more powerful than my Subaru Forester, which is about the same size car, about the same weight. In fact, I think it's a little lighter. And it has more horsepower. It's got 180 horsepower versus this one 110. And it's got a similar torque, actually. My Subaru has 180 or 175 foot-pounds of torque, and this car has about 180 foot-pounds of torque as well. The difference is that this car, with no transmission, it feels like it has power right away. It doesn't, well, I mean, it does have power right away. It doesn't feel like it, it does. So when I want to go and accelerate, put my foot in it, and the car starts to speed up right away. There's no hesitation, there's no downshifting, there's no lurching. It just starts to speed up, and it does so nice and silently. It doesn't make a racket about it. So now I'm just cruising along on the highway here. We get into kind of a slower zone about halfway through my drive. I like it. It's quite relaxing. The car is very comfortable to drive for me. I don't have any complaints about it in that respect. And I like the quietness of the car. I like the fact that it's hard to, you can't convey this in a video obviously, but it doesn't vibrate. So you don't really even think about it in the gas car. It's not really until you experience the absence of it that you really know how quiet a car can be and how vibration-free a car can be until you've been in an electric car and driven it around. I get back into our gas car now maybe once a month perhaps, if that. Sometimes I go months without sitting in it. And when I get in it and start the car in the morning, I'm always amazed at how stinky it is and how much it rattles and it kind of shakes a bit as it's getting turned on until it settles down. And this is a new car we're talking about. It's not an old junker. It's a 2011. So it's the pinnacle of gas technology, basically. And when you're driving, it's just not nearly as smooth. And the torque band on my Subaru Forester is quite flat and starts at low RPM. So it's got power and all the rest of that, but it just doesn't feel as smooth as this car does, nowhere near. And when you're driving at highway speeds, this car is more quiet for sure. I mean, the thing you hear the most is wind noise, which picks up as fast as you go. At 80, it's not objectionable at all. When you're getting into kind of the 120 zone, maybe it starts to become a bit objectionable. It's not bad. And of course, there's no engine noise, so it's very quiet. It's easy to drive along and have a conversation with people and not feel like you were having to yell at them. I mean, the loudest thing I can hear right now is my HVAC system. I'm at a small hill and I'm using 30 or 40 kilowatts. Again, you don't notice it at all in this car. In a regular car, it was downshifted and started to make the rackety noises that gas and diesel engines typically make when you're having to put them on your load. Here I just cruising along, nice and silent. Eco Mode will give you a bit more range. And really, I think it primarily does this by making it so that the go pedal is less sensitive. So when you have it out of Eco Mode, I actually find it pretty annoying because the go pedal becomes quite touchy. And you're finding, you're kind of like this a lot. You're accelerating, you're decelerating, you're accelerating, you're decelerating. Well, that's why you use up energy. It's better to accelerate slowly, not slowly, but steadily, and then maintain whatever speed you want. Change speeds, at a steady rate as opposed to and on the highway, I find it even more annoying to drive in the other mode. It's harder to maintain a steady speed. So I leave it in Eco basically all the time because if you put your foot in it, even with it on Eco, you still have all the power available. So and just stomp on it, Don't worry about being nice to it. Because there's no gears here. You don't have to worry about it getting caught up in gear changes and whatever. Just put your foot in it. And so I don't find any advantage to driving with Eco Mode off. And you know what? I've fiddled with this energy screen a lot in the HVAC. Supposedly it might run the HVAC at lower settings in Eco, but I have never seen it. I've tried both. I seem to be able to use the same amount of heat, energy, or power to run the HVAC, whether I'm in Eco Mode or not. So I say just ignore it. Drive whichever one feels more comfortable for you. For me, that's Eco. You've got the power when you want it, and it's not all touchy when you don't want it. So I stay in that. Now I thought I'd get into a bit of a conversation around why did I get this car in the first place. Well, we moved to the area, and I got a job in an adjacent town. And where I'd been living previously, that wasn't the case. So we had only one car. Now we were in this situation where we were probably going to need two cars because, unfortunately, the transit system just doesn't work for our needs in Nelson. So, and it's a little too far to bike the kids to school and too much uphill. Nelson's quite mountainous. And so that wasn't going to work for us. So we started looking at other options, and I spent a lot of time looking at the economic side of it because we're a young family and we're only one income, so we don't have unlimited resources, of course, and that's true of most people. So the economics were an important factor for me. I couldn't just go out and buy a Tesla Model S as much as I would have liked to. So I had to look at the economic side of things and did a bunch of spreadsheet figuring and looked at possible inflation scenarios and how much we were going to drive and what was realistic use for this car beyond my commute. And in fact, was an EV even possible to do with my commute because it is 70 kilometers one way. And you might have noticed I'm also driving beside a river, and I follow a river the entire drive to work. So this area has a large amount of hydroelectric dams. And the other thing that's always bothered me about gas cars is, the entire gasoline chain, so that the exploration to getting the oil out of the ground, to the effects when you consume the oil in a combustion engine, to the remediation legacies that are left by gas stations. One of my first co-op jobs was to go and look at old gas stations, and I really didn't like the fact that we were polluting the groundwater in order to drive ourselves around, and not just like one or two places, quite consistently across North America. There's pollution from oil refineries and gasoline dispensing stations. So, and then there's all the politics around oil and the fact that it's not everywhere in the world and it causes all sorts of conflict. So so the economics I really looked at because we had to, but fundamentally I wanted to be driving an electric vehicle to get away from all of these side effects of driving a gasoline engine car. It turns out nicely that they happen to be way more fun to drive, and I enjoy this way more than my gas car. But so the thing is we're following all these rivers, and there are some dams on these rivers, and they're run-of-river dams, sort of. Some of them have a little bit of storage, some of them don't. I know hydroelectric, you know, every source of energy has some form of impact on it. Large hydroelectric reservoirs have an impact, there's no doubt about that. But I would say, you know, if you go and look at all the possible impacts from a hydroelectric dam, they're lower than, say, the tar sands or drilling offshore oil, or, you know, maybe they weren't, maybe drilling for the very initial oil in the 1920s when we had the light sweet crude in Texas and it was spouting out of the ground and you only needed a couple of wells. Okay, maybe that was lower impact in the grand scheme of things than a hydroelectric dam, but even that I would, you know, I would perhaps doubt that. But it's pretty clear to me that all the new methods of getting oil, all the non-traditional methods, are more of an impact than even a large hydroelectric dam. So, but we've got all these nice run-of-river dams here, and most of our electricity is generated locally. We do take some off-peak energy at night, I think, but from say maybe the coal plant next door. But for all intents and purposes, my car is essentially run on the power of the river that I drive beside every day. But I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of like the 100-mile diet, but for my car, and you know, it's way less than 100 miles actually, which is pretty cool. And that's the case. That can be the case everywhere that electric cars come into play. There can be local renewable energy pretty much anywhere around the world. It's going to take different forms depending on where you live. Maybe in the prairies, you know, it's obviously not going to be hydroelectric, but in the southern prairies, especially in Canada, is our largest solar resource. Solar combined with wind and energy storage, and that may very well be the ticket for prairie regions in Canada. Quebec has a huge amount of hydroelectric, so does a lot of Atlantic Canada, and offshore wind power. So depending on where you live in Canada, the energy mix might end up being different, but the point is, on an electric car, you can always drive on 100% renewable energy, which you just can't do that on a gas-fueled car. There's no way for that to ever occur. And some people might say, oh, well, there's biodiesel, and there's ethanol, and there's these other things, and maybe we'll switch to compressed natural gas cars, and we'll run off of methane that comes out of landfills and from anaerobic digestion or sewage treatment. Well, yeah, okay, maybe you can do that on a very small scale, but the car is so inefficient for burning hydrocarbons, converting that to actual mechanical energy to move you down the road, that and the fleet is so large that you just can't do it. You know, maybe a couple city buses could run on compressed natural gas from a regional landfill, but that's the extent of it. We're not going to ever get the entire population driving that way. Really, the only viable option, as far as I can tell, is an electric vehicle. I hesitate to even get into the hydrogen fuel cell discussion, but suffice it to say that the electric car is twice as efficient as a fuel cell car for the same amount of starting electricity, and that will always remain the case. So unless battery development really stops, I don't see fuel cells ever becoming a mainstay in light vehicles at the very least. Maybe they have a niche application for long-haul trucking or something. I don't know what the case will be for them yet, but I would strongly, my opinion is very strong that light cars will not be using fuel cells in 10 years' time. We will all be driving an electrical vehicle or plug-in hybrid electrical vehicle. You know, and another really good reason to be driving an electric car is to minimize local air pollution. So, in an area that we live in the Kootenays, the local air shed is not saturated to the same extent with combustion, the effects of combustion vehicles and other combustion sources, like, say, the Lower Mainland is, and California. Having said that, it's still, particularly when you look at diesel vehicles, like take for example a school bus. School buses don't have the same emission standards, as far as I'm aware, as a light vehicle does, a diesel light vehicle. And we know for a fact that diesel emissions are carcinogenic. So when we switch to an electric vehicle and switch our buses to an electric vehicle, there is a bus company in Quebec called Lion Bus that they're now making the e-Lion, and I don't know that they're commercially available yet. I still think they're under trial runs, but essentially we're going to have a regular school bus in a short period of time that runs on electricity only, and instead of just minimizing the emissions, completely removes them from the equation. And I can't help but think that putting aside all the greenhouse gas and global warming implications, the effect on the airshed of a city, especially one that has unfavorable topography that gets inversions a lot of the time, I think the only way you're going to dramatically improve their air quality is to remove combustion sources, and that's changing people to electric vehicles. And that's a really good reason for society as a whole to move towards electric vehicles, to just get rid of that paradigm of burning dyno and emitting that all into our local airsheds and having to breathe it every day. Mountain, the local ski hill. Way up in the sky there. A little bit of snow at the top. Go look up my trip reports on traveling to Rossland and you'll see what that's like. It's to say it's 600 meters up from the trail just to get to the town, so it's quite the climb. Very short distance, it uses quite a bit of energy. But you get to recover all that on your way back down, which you don't get to do in a gas car. So on my way back down from Rossland, I typically regenerate almost 10% of my energy, provided I have the battery charge below 80% when I unplug. And that is about 1.5 to 2 kilowatt hours. So that's enough to drive me 10 to 15 kilometers. So that's the amount of energy I can recover from going down the hill from Rossland to trail. Well, no gas car gets to do that. In fact, there was a study that showed that about 10 to 15% of all energy used in your electric car is recuperated through regenerative braking. It's pretty substantial. I mean, a Prius would run out of regeneration capacity long before my car does. I think the working energy storage in a Prius is maybe half a kilowatt hour or something like that. So, he could regenerate for the first third of the hill down, and then the rest is just wasted at that point. So, you need a plug-in hybrid at the very least with a larger battery or an electric vehicle to be able to take advantage of recuperating all the energy from those long mountain passes we have here in the Keys. To work in the trail area. As you can see, I'm a little below 50% battery. Let's see here. I'll let these guys go. I've heard of them. Anyways, so I'm almost to work in the trail area. You can see my driving range is down to 52 kilometers, battery percent down to the 30s. So obviously I do have to charge up here during the day. I just use a regular wall outlet, and I'm back up into the 80s by the time I need to go home at the end of my shift. which is perfectly adequate. That's all I need. This has been a great car for me. I've been driving it for a year and a half on this drive. I would recommend to anybody that if you have a Commute that's anywhere over 30 or 40 kilometers, that you strongly look at getting an electric car or a plug-in hybrid. And I'm pretty sure you can find a vehicle that will work for your commute and work within your budget, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll get a chance to drive the future, and you won't want to go back to an old gasoline car because these guys are just better.